Chapter 14. Coincidentally, Jane and I received almost identical inheritances. Dad's will had been agreed and eventually finalised. Ma's marriage to Sam released Jane's inheritance capital from her father, which had been held for her until Ma died or married again. I had been watching property prices with some concern. It seemed to me they were on the way to significant increases. "If we don't move now, we may never manage it," I said to Jane, so we started looking around. As a precaution, I checked with Jeff Lancashire that there was not the slightest chance of such a plan being messed up through me being posted either overseas or elsewhere in the UK. He said I could buy locally with confidence, with a continued company-supported mortgage. In July, we found in Little Gaddesden, a charming village conveniently 5 miles from Tring, Berkhamsted and Hemel Hempstead, a bungalow on 1.5 acres of garden with a further 2 acres of grass paddock at the back. This paddock was rented to a neighbouring farmer for sheep grazing. The bungalow had originally been built by the developer for himself, and he had named it Pedley, after a village he had lived near in his childhood. Pedley stood in the arms of a Y-shaped, unmade drive that ran from its base across the village green, through a wall, up past a few houses, to where it branched either side of the bungalow to another few houses. This drive was on Pedley's deeds, and therefore we would be responsible for keeping it in good condition. Pedley was owned at present by a builder whose asking price had dropped from £15,000 to £13,500 because he needed to move owing to his wife's deteriorating health. Perhaps, also, she preferred a warmer climate to live in. We were to discover that Little Gaddesden, being 500 feet higher than the surrounding villages and having virtually nothing between it and the North Sea, would have snow still lying there in the winter, long after it had melted away elsewhere. With a single and 2 double bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a 40-foot long loft under the roof, Pedley had just the right housing potential for us. Outside was the 1.5 acre garden, on which at the back was a broken down tennis court that we could replace, and in the front 2 garages and an old stable block. Our lawyer, Rod Kelly of Penny and Thorne in Berkhamsted, who had helped me with Dad's will, prepared the contract. I got the ready help of one of our company builder foremen. He agreed to fit a couple of dormer windows in the roof, front and back of the bungalow, and another window on the other side walls, so that we could have single bedrooms at each end of the loft and a large playroom in the middle. So, in Tring, we started talking with our friends, John Hawkes of Brown and Merry, about selling our Marshcroft Lane house, which we had enlarged by building a 4th bedroom over the garage, thus increasing the value of the property to about half what we would be paying for Pedley. Meanwhile, life was not going well for Peter Brooke. He had suffered concussion in a car accident in Uganda, and he discovered his personal and company insurances did not cover such an eventuality. In Persia, he collected lymphatic meningitis, diagnosed by Dr. Adams. This would not go away, and eventually he was to die prematurely from it. But, despite his illness, his enthusiasm for work continued. He was determined to get a PhD, and he spotted some work published by a German entomologist stating that black fly behaviour was affected by shapes and colours. Through the Brooks' garden ran a stream that had had its black fly residence, and in no time, to the astonishment of visitors and passers-by, Peter had erected large wooden images of different shapes and colours all over his back lawn leading to the stream. He worked hard to establish links between the black fly behaviour and the shapes and colours of the statues. He wrote up his work as it developed and had it published. But slowly he came to realize that the original German work on which his was based was false. Never was anyone more surprised and depressed. In my view, although Peter's death came from the lymphatic meningitis, the hurt from his PhD fiasco hastened his death. So died a determined, softly spoken friend of great integrity. At Cooper's, while the report of the PR consultants was voluminous and detailed, there was still the question of what we should call ourselves around the world. There was no way AAG was going to allow this decision to be made by PR. So, one day I was asked by Peter Upton for my recommendation for the names of our overseas subsidiaries. These obviously needed simplifying to give them more impetus. I recommended the names Cooper, or Borough's Welcome, or Welcome should be emphasized dependent on the products and activities concerned. So, for example, instead of Cooper McDoodle and Robinson East Africa Limited, the company would be called Cooper Kenya Limited. The human pharmaceutical company there would become Borough's Welcome Kenya Limited. Where there were separate units, such as the foot and mouth disease vaccine plant in Kenya, that should become Welcome Kenya Limited. So a group stand at the agricultural show might be called the Cooper Welcome Stand. Peter Upton approved this and set about ordering such changes to all the Cooper and BW overseas subsidiaries under his control. Welcome would ultimately become the dominant name. There was a Welcome Foundation monthly newsletter published under the title Foundation News, and obviously Basil Saunders would be an important contributor to it. Basil and I had hit it off from the day he took his job, and I quietly thought to myself that this should do me no harm come the day I wanted some personal publicity for my unit, and or indeed myself. I had been asked to see what we could do to develop markets worldwide for our household products, such as were being produced by a BW factory in Chicago. Their products were mainly cosmetic, perfumes for household pets, that might have a limited market outside America. And certainly the CTB staff would have little interest. So we had to get closer to the problem. I had no staff allocated to such products, so in no time I was flying into Chicago. There a cab took me to the end of the street in which the BW factory lay. The cabbie refused to take me any further. "Too dangerous," he said. That sounds good, I thought. So I walked down the street to the factory where I found pretty demoralized staff. The manager had to pay regular protection money to the ruling gangster for the factory manager, his staff, and the business to stay in one piece. There was some unrest in Chicago, the black community considering they were being treated as only second-class citizens. As usual when overseas, to get a feel of the place, I walked down the center of Chicago, where I saw black Americans ordering and eating T-bone steaks the size of which I had never seen, let alone eaten. My Kenya Africans would like to be an American second-class citizen, I thought. Anyway, domestic pet cosmetics would tie in, perhaps, from a marketing viewpoint, with aerosols. And so I set about recruiting. Before that, to my disappointment, Laurie announced he had been given the job of product manager by Johnson & Johnson, a large influential company. I could not match the offer. So soon he left, and I found an excellent replacement to continue the Coopermatic marketing impetus. For aerosols, the other over-the-counter OTC products, such as the American Pet Cosmetics, I recruited a youngster, Stuart Cropper, who had a good marketing job with another company. He settled in excellently, and in no time produced a convincing report as to how the group should best exploit overseas our OTC products, particularly aerosols, fly-killing deodorant, furniture polish, etc. At about this time, a team from an American associate visited us. To our astonishment, the team included a female export manager. Well, with us, females were used as secretaries and even personal assistants, PAs. But really, a manager? Where'd she got her training? And didn't they know no one in Arabia would deal with a female on business? Export sales work in British companies seemed to be given low priority, resulting in events such as the following example. In the Middle East, the export representative of a German firm was discussing business, in English, with an Arab in an Arab's office. An assistant came in to say an English representative of a British company was in the outside office. The Arab turned to the German and said, "All right, I'll deal with this if you don't mind, then we can get on with our important discussion." An English lad was shown in and, in a broad Midlands accent, he made his presentation to the Arab. At the end of it, the Arab said, "Okay, what hotel are you staying in? I'll get in touch with you later there today." The English lad was shown to the door, and the Arab turned and said to the German, in English, "I didn't understand a word of that, did you?" I had now visited over 30 countries on export marketing work, and in England I was developing an important relationship with Shell Chemicals. CTB trials had found that one of their chemicals, Supona, was very efficient for tick control, especially when synergized with Delnav, which we got from our close American suppliers, Hercules Chemicals. I started visiting Shell House on the border of the Thames and having regular discussions concerning our possible use of other of their chemicals in the farming and veterinary markets. I had a cordial relationship with the marketing executives I was talking to, but increasingly I became frustrated at the lack of the development of our partnership. It seemed to me that substantial excuses were being found for failure to move our affinity forward. I became mildly frustrated. But at least we have the most important product, Supona, sewn up, I thought.